1. The Moberly-Jourdain Incident. In 1901, two English women, Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, took a vacation to France. While they were there, they visited the Palace of Versailles because, you know, that's what one does when one visits France. And while they were at Versailles, they visited what's known as the Petit Trianon, a little chateau on the palace grounds that Louis XVI gave to Marie Antoinette as a private space for her to hang out and do whatever it was that a teenage queen did when she was relaxing back then. But while they were there, they claimed they saw some odd occurrences. They said they spotted people wearing anachronistic clothing, heard mysterious voices, and saw buildings and other structures that were no longer present and, indeed, hadn't existed since the late 1700s. Finally, they said they caught sight of Marie Antoinette herself, drawing in a sketchbook. They claimed to have fallen into a time slip and been briefly transported back more than 100 years before being jolted back to the present by a tour guide. Did they really travel back in time? Probably not. Various explanations include everything from a folie à deux, basically a joint delusion, to a simple misinterpretation of what they actually saw. But for what it's worth, in 1911, roughly 10 years after what they said they had experienced occurred, the two women published a book about the whole thing under the names Elizabeth Morrison and Frances Lamont, simply called An Adventure. These days, it's available as The Ghosts of Trianon. Check it out, if you like. 2. The Mystery of John Titor. John Titor is perhaps the most famous person who claims he's time traveled. Trouble is, no one has heard from him for almost 17 years. Also, he claimed he came from the future. The story is long and involved, but the short version is this. He said that he had been sent back to 1975 in order to bring an IBM 5100 computer to his own time. He was just stopping in 2000 for a brief rest on his way back home. The computer, he said, was needed to debug various legacy computer programs in 2036 in order to combat a known problem similar to Y2K called the year 2038 problem. John didn't refer to it as such, but he said that Unix was going to have an issue in 2038, which is what we thought was going to happen back when the calendar ticked over from 1999 to 2000. Opinions are divided on whether John Titor was real. Some folks think he was the only real example of time travel we've ever seen, while others think it's one of the most enduring hoaxes we've ever seen. I fall on the side of hoax, but that's just me. 3. Project Pegasus and the Chrononauts. In 2011, Andrew D. Basiago and William Stillings stepped forward, claiming that they were former chrononauts who had worked with an alleged DARPA program called Project Pegasus. Project Pegasus, they said, had been developed in the 1970s. In 1980, they were taking a Mars training class at a community college in California, the college presumably functioning as a cover for the alleged program when they were picked to go to Mars. The mode of transport? Teleportation. It gets better, too. Basiago and Stillings also said that the then 19-year-old Barack Obama, whom they claimed was going by the name Barry Soetoro at the time, was also one of the students chosen to go to Mars. They said the teleportation occurred via something called a jump room. The White House has denied that Obama has ever been to Mars. Only if you count watching Marvin the Martian. Tommy Vietor, then the spokesman for the National Security Council, told Wired's Danger Room in 2012. 4. Victor Goddard's airfield time slip. Like Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, senior Royal Air Force Commander Sir Robert Victor Goddard, widely known as Victor Goddard, claimed to have experienced a time slip. In 1935, Goddard flew over what had been the RAF station Drem in Scotland on his way from Edinburgh to Andover, England. The Drem station was no longer in use. After demobilization efforts following the First World War, it had mostly been left to its own devices. And, indeed, that's what Goddard said he saw as he flew over it, a largely abandoned airfield. On his return trip, though, things got weird. He followed the same route he had on the way there, but during the flight, he got waylaid by a storm. As he struggled to regain control of his plane, however, he spotted the Drem airfield through a break in the clouds, and when he got closer to it, the bad weather suddenly dissipated. But the airfield wasn't abandoned this time. It was busy, with several planes on the runway and mechanics scurrying about. Within seconds, though, the storm reappeared, and Goddard had to fight to keep his plane aloft again. He made it home just fine, and went on to live another 50 years, but the incident stuck with him. Indeed, in 1975, he wrote a book called Flight Towards Reality, which included discussion of the whole thing. Here's the really weird bit. In 1939, the Drem airfield was brought back to life. Did Goddard see a peek into the airfield's future via a time slip back in 1935? Who knows? And see what you think. 6. The Hipster Time Traveler. In the early 2010s, a photograph depicting the 1941 reopening of the South Fork Bridge in Gold Bridge, British Columbia in Canada went viral for seemingly depicting a man that looked just a bit too modern to have been photographed in 1941. He looks, in fact, like a time-traveling hipster, graphic t-shirt, textured sweater, sunglasses, the works. The photo hadn't been manipulated, the original can be seen here. So what the heck was going on? Well, Snopes has plenty of reasonable explanations for the man's appearance. Each item he's wearing, for example, could very easily have been acquired in 1941. Others have also backed up those facts. But the bottom line is that it's never been definitively debunked, so the idea that this photograph could depict a man from our time who had traveled back to 1941 persists. What do you think? 7. Father Ernetti's Chronovisor. According to at least two books, Catholic priest Father François Brun's 2002 book Le Nouveau Mystère du Vatican, in English, The Vatican's New Mystery, and Peter Crass's 2000 book Father Ernetti's Chronovisor, The Creation and Disappearance of the World's First Time Machine. Father Pellegrino Ernetti, who was a Catholic priest like Brun, invented a machine called a chronovisor that allowed him to view the past. Ernetti was real, however, the existence of the machine, or even whether he actually claimed to have invented it, has never been proven. Alas, he died in 1994, so we can't ask him, either. I mean, if we were ever able to find his chronovisor, maybe we could, but at that point, wouldn't we already have the information we need? I'm extremely skeptical of this story, by the way, but both Brun's and Crass's books swear up, down, left, and right that it's true, so, you be the judge.